tools you need include a 10mm wrench, 13mm wrench, 8mm socket, 10mm socket, 13mm socket, 4mm Allen wrench, and your socket driver. So the first thing you want to do is take a 8mm socket and remove these two bolts that are holding the seat on. Once you have the two bolts removed from the seat here, put a slight pressure here and just slide it back. We've already removed the bolts, but there will be two more bolts right here that you'll want to remove. The other thing we've already done is we've drilled two holes in the fender here. So these two holes right here line up with these two holes that exist on the subframe assembly of your machine. This is where your spacers are going to sit to mount your rack. The best way to figure out how to drill these holes is to mark from the underside of these two holes with a pen the center point, and then measuring the width of these two holes, making sure that your center point marks are correct on the fender, turning your fender upside down, and then drilling through. The diameter of these spacers is a little bit larger than 5/8 of an inch. What we recommend is drilling a 5/8 inch hole and then working the bit around to slightly increase the diameter. Ideally, the spacer would fit snugly in the hole. So just work your way slowly to get the hole just large enough to fit the spacer in. Once you've drilled the holes in the fender, go ahead and slide the fender back into place. Notice too that there's a tab right here that's designed to fit in the fender and keep it in place. At this point you can also put the rubber strap back to keep this electronics component in place. Next step is to get the kit with the hex head bolts. Slide a washer over the bolt, and then you'll want to start the bolts in both holes. These hex heads are 10mm. You want to leave about 3/4 to almost an inch of the bolt still sticking out of the with the bolt about an inch sticking out through the bottom. You want to then take this bracket, slide it underneath with the bracket piece pointing up. You want to take the shorter spacers, slide them up. At this point you want to tighten the bolts so they're completely through, and as you can see there'll be a little bit of extra bolt hanging out the bottom. Now take the other two washers and nylock locking nuts. Once again 10mm. You don't want to tighten the nuts all the way, but snug to kind of keep the bracket in place. It may make sense to use a 10mm wrench on the top of the bolts to keep them from getting loose. You can now take the two longer spacers, slide them into those pre-drilled holes. Now you want to open the second kit that has the button head cap screws. On the outside of the bracket here, and then with a washer, slide the button head cap screw through and through that longer spacer. These button head cap screws are 4mm. Once again, tighten these up so they're somewhat snug, but a little bit of play. You want to take the third kit with the hex bolt, shorter bolt, slide a washer on, and then line up the slotted hole with the bracket here. Pop it through. Sometimes those spacers, the shorter spacers underneath, need to be slid around a bit to kind of line up with the welded bolt that's on the sub-assembly, so they wrap around it. Using a 13mm socket and 13mm wrench, with the other slide the other washer on the other side, along with the nylock nut. So now we want to snug up these two first, followed by these two, and lastly, now we tighten these up. Now that we've got the rack installed, we're ready to slide the seat back on. One nice elegant thing about this rack design is we've actually created a cutout here that matches up nicely with the seat, making it really easy to slide your seat on and off as needed. The last step is to screw the seat back on. Now you're ready to ride.